intensive diplomacy is ongoing. We continue to push for an immediate end to hostilities without preconditions and humanitarian access for the millions of people in northern Ethiopia who need life-saving aid.
That was U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken addressing the dire crisis unfolding in Ethiopia. Ethiopia's government is now calling on civilians to arm themselves against who they call rebel opposition forces. Those forces from Tigray are now marching and reportedly within 200 miles of the capital, Addis Ababa. The Biden administration is sounding the alarm. Today, the U.S. military was put in position, special operation forces near Ethiopia in case the situation worsens, and assistance needs to be provided to the U.S. embassy there. This comes as the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has now wrapped up his trip to Africa. It's a very tense time in the region. While on the continent, Blinken worked to address various diplomatic and security concerns, including the crisis in Ethiopia. The U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Ambassador Jeffrey Feltman, announced there's been partial progress towards a ceasefire in Ethiopia. He also cautioned the recent alarming increase in military operations now threatens to destroy negotiations between the various parties. Meanwhile, in Ethiopia, the rhetoric of the government is becoming more dramatic. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is now vowing to personally lead his country's troops into battle against forces from the Tigray province. Some in Ethiopia view the cost of this war as simply too much to bear.
I really can't say much about this war. When you think of the number of people killed, we cannot even plan for tomorrow. Losing our country and our people is like losing ourselves.
In the northern region of Tigray, shown here on this map, there have been credible reports of ethnic cleansing, as well as using starvation as a weapon of war. The humanitarian crisis in Ethiopia's Tigray region and other parts of Ethiopia is getting worse every day. At least 7 million people are in need of emergency food assistance. 2 million people are displaced, and another 2 million people are facing emergency levels of hunger. Joining us now to discuss the dire situation in Ethiopia and what we can do about it is Ethiopian American journalist Hermela Aregawi. Thank you for joining us tonight, Hermela. How is your family and how are you reacting to the crisis unfolding in Ethiopia?
I think a lot of us are reacting cautiously. The most recent alert that we saw from the State Department is part of its psychological warfare game on the people in Ethiopia as part of its proxy war in that region. It is backing the TPLF rebels, and all indications point to the fact that the rebels are not doing well on the military front. Today we saw the Prime Minister as well as the Defense Minister say they're going to Lalibela, where at some point the Tigrayan rebels had captured. Lalibela is even further than Debrecen, which is where TPLF officials are bragging about Tigrayan rebels having captured. So a lot of us are very cautious when it comes to reacting what comes out of the State Department. Their most recent game of psychological warfare started earlier this month when there were reports that Tigrayan rebels were inching closer to Addis Ababa, more than 350 kilometers out from it. And so at this point, I think what a lot of us are doing is just talking to our family members that are in Addis that are telling us things are fine. Generally speaking, there are Americans within Addis that were at the protest earlier this month that said that they did feel fine. At the end of the day, it's up to each individual to decide whether they feel safe, but the State Department's alarming report is not backed by evidence.
When you say the psychological warfare, that is a pretty heavy charge to levy against the U.S. government. Do you disagree with the requests, I guess, because they can't force anybody to leave, but the alerts telling U.S. citizens in Ethiopia to leave the country the same way other countries have done?
Yeah, it seems like the West is pretty organized in their messaging, but it does not mean that they are on the right side of things. It is a heavy accusation, but it is one that comes with a year of evidence that showed that the United States continues to exaggerate problems and hides the solutions to those problems. So, for example, these allegations of ethnic cleansing are not backed by evidence. The UN Human Rights Commission, as well as the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission together released a joint investigation recently that said they did not find evidence of starvation being used as a weapon. In fact, what we know is that aid that was sent into Tigray between July and December, about 800 trucks went missing, and there are allegations by UN officials who have blown the whistle and said that higher-ups in the UN are working with the TPLF to redirect that aid for war. In those 2 months, Tigrayan rebels were seen on camera on pro-TPLF TV stations moving into the Amhara and Afar regions, where we now know thousands were killed. So the U.S. is not on the right side
Hermela,
of things.
speaking of that report, and Hermela, speaking of that report, you're referencing a report that was done with the United Nations in coordination with many representatives of the Ethiopian government. And even then, the report said that it found credible evidence on both sides of the use of rape, of the use of attacks on women. So is there not enough blame to go around?
There's absolutely enough blame to go around. You know, when you start a war, we all expect that all parties to the conflict are going to commit some atrocities. But I think the one point that needs to be hit home is this war was completely avoidable. TPLF, the old regime, who had a lot of power in that country, as well as the international apparatus on their side, they controlled much of the army. And so when they started that war on November 4th, 2020, which recently Senator Coons in a panel at Yale said, to be fair, the TPLF did start that war. And they did so by mobilizing ethnic Tigrayans within the military to attack their fellow Ethiopian soldiers because they thought that they had enough of an upper hand to capture the country and overthrow the federal government, but it was a huge miscalculation. So that premise is, I think, important to hit home, and then we can all be disappointed by the fact that atrocities were committed by all parties to the conflict, including Tigrayan militias.
Indeed, atrocities are a little bit more than just a casualty of war. They're usually defined by intent. Hermela, appreciate you joining us, folks. We've been talking with Ethiopian American journalist Hermela Aregawi.